most of these people that we're getting into high debt to income loans, meaning the payment is a large percentage of their income.
Like 48, 49%, is that what we're talking about?
Mm-hmm. They're on an upward income trajectory.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this payment is going to be really hard for the next year. Mm-hmm. But if you guys can see some increase in income over time, 5 years from now, that payment's not going to feel like much at all. Right. So those are the ones that I'm like, if you can get into a house right now, do it.
So Trump got shot, huh?
Trump got shot.
That's not what we're talking about.
In the ear.
When did that happen?
Did you see the video of like the trajectory of the bullet from like overhead?
Oh yeah.
That was a dead man walking. He's a dead man walking.
I don't think I've consumed any other information in the last 4 days. That's it. That's the only thing I've been focusing on.
My mom's sending me speeches and podcasts, and
Alex
she's
Jones
wrapped up in it.
Yeah, it's just the craziest thing.
Yesterday I was listening to Alex Jones and Tim Dillon's emergency podcast.
Oh my gosh, I'm sure it was excellent.
I had to move the couch into the middle of the room so I could pace around and like listen to it. You know what I mean? Like
Tim Dillon and Alex Jones. I didn't even know that. Have they ever had a conversation before?
They're best friends.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's where Tim Dillon gets his craziness.
Alex Jones will rant, and then Tim Dillon will rant. If anything, it's just pure entertainment. It's so good.
Anyway. It is pure entertainment. It is pure entertainment. So Trump got shot. We have to talk about that for a second, but we're talking about real estate today. We're halfway through the year. We're doing quarterly real estate updates. Mm-hmm. We got Chantry here. What's up, Chant?
Howdy.
Only the best.
Only the best.
Been watching you guys. I feel like I'm hanging out with celebrities.
Oh, shut up. Well, he's a liar.
Self-proclaimed.
Episode
He's more of a celebrity in real estate than we ever would be.
I don't
Chantry's
think so.
a legend.
73 episodes.
This is 73 right here. 73 episodes.
I thought the last one we did was 76.
I don't know. I'm making up the numbers.
We're in the 70s.
We're in the 70s. Yeah. The YouTube calculator says 72 or something like that. But
we'll just round up to like 81. Nice even number.
81.
81. Nice 81. Even number.
Yeah. I love it.
It doesn't really matter. We've been doing it for over a year, and so we're gonna just keep doing it. We're just going to keep doing it. Mm-hmm. So real estate...
Yeah, because this place is going to keep growing.
Exactly. Well, and there's always news coming out. There's always new things to talk about. You know, I'm always thinking about something else whether it's a new development or whether it's... water,
energy,
changing energy. I still... public safety and things like that. New developments there.
The water's a funny one. I run into some loan officers at a big guild retreat down in Vegas, and they're like, "Where do you live now?" And I'm like trying to describe it. They're like, "You guys are the ones with the water problems, right?" And they're like from like,
it's like, we're upstream from you guys, right?
They're like Tennessee. I had two different people like kind of say something like that, and they're like from the Midwest.
Yeah.
Well, this is like
they've never even been to Southern Utah.
I think this was like 2 years ago. Maybe it was 3 years ago. We were driving through Vegas, and I had the radio on. I think I was trying to find traffic or something like that. And it was on Pandora. It was like a commercial on Pandora talking about how Utah mismanages water. It was like commercial.
Wow.
And I was like, why are they running ads blasting Utah for mismanaging water? Like, I just didn't understand it.
Remember Vice did that piece on water down here, like the small Utah town that's running out of water, and they interview Zach Renstrom and like take everything out of context. And
exactly. And then because we, as St. George goes, we get all of our water from Pine Mountain, and then we mismanaged it. We mismanaged it for a long time because we had the water to do that. We were able to do that. They farmed, they grew alfalfa, and it takes a lot of water. And
we were constantly out of water until we started storing it.
Exactly. And so, but no matter what we're not taking water from like some other area. It's not like we were taking water from some small town up in the middle of the state. All of the water falls within our county limits almost, right? It's like a little bit of Iron County, but basically from Pine Mountain Navajo Lake feeds the Virgin River. We take the water from the area that we have. It's not like we're piping water in from somewhere else.
John Dutton a river and
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, like L.A. and Southern California, they get all their water from somewhere else. That's where they get their water from. Then none of that water is falling in L.A. Right? All that water is coming from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so we did. I think truthfully, they did mismanage the water until the population got to the size where they're like, "Oh, we gotta rein this in," and they've done a good job. I think the whole community's done a good job.
And then McCrae just did a video on the plan moving forward.
Oh yeah, I haven't watched that one yet.
It's pretty good. He interviews Zach and talks about what's going on with some of the reservoirs and like some of the population increases maybe that are associated with the reservoirs. Or in other words, like, with the new reservoirs, this place could handle 600,000 people. Not that we're going to get there, but
Got to have the land.
And if you pull up, Blake, you don't need to pull it up, but like if you look at the water, the Utah State Water website and look at the percentage full of reservoirs, Washington County's reservoirs are all 100% full.
Yeah.
For now, and then until
which is lucky because we needed it.
Lucky, but yeah, and then it'll drain off a little bit until the next runoff. Mm-hmm. But we do a pretty good capturing the water and storing it. Yeah, is what Zach's argument is.
And I think
he's right.
They're pulling water from different areas that they hadn't previously really pushed it to drill water for, because lots of aquifers like up in Burrell and Newcastle area. There's a lot of water stored down there and stuff like that. So they've done a lot. They've expanded the water. I'm not as worried about water as I was 12 months ago, because it did seem like we were really running on an empty straw, but the reservoirs filled up and we had good snow, and it turned out all right. And all the plans for the new reservoirs, I think, are going to work out great.
How big of an impact is just a couple things that they've done? Like, I live out in Little Valley, and they turned all those Little Valley soccer fields into turf. I mean, that's got to be a lot. I mean, I don't know how many acres that is, but that's a lot of ground to water.
I think it was like 3 million acre feet of water or something like that they've saved over the last 5 years in trading
Zach
out.
talks about it in the last interview he does.
And even the minor things, like they give a little rebate if you xeriscape your front or backyard. And,
$2 a square foot or something.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that there's a bunch of like caveats. Like if you take that money, you can't ever put a pool on that property. It's basically like a lien on the property.
Oh, it is.
So even like the future buyers couldn't put a pool on that property
unless they pay back the $180 that they gave you.
No, I don't even know if there's an out. I don't even think there's a way to reverse it.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, my one of my buddies,
can you imagine,
did it in Santa Clara.
I would just do it.
I know. So I was going to follow up with him with the contract, because he said he was going to send me the contract. And I don't think he sent me the contract, but yeah, from what I understand is that there's some caveats. Is if you take that money, you're basically a low water use lot, and then you have to. That's going to be tagged to that property in perpetuity. So that lot couldn't get changed.
This
over.
is a silly question that I should know. If you were to just go add a pool in an existing home. Like you go add an addition onto an existing home, you got to get the city involved so that it's legally part of the deal. Mm-hmm. Is a pool that way?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So you have to go get a permit.
Same thing. Like, you would want, especially if you were in like a weird area and like there's some interesting engineering, you for sure would want to get an engineering report done. But like, I know people in my neighborhood that have just put pools in.
And they had to go get like
they just do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, how would they
I think the contractors themselves, because if they get caught midway through it and they don't have the permit, I think the punishment comes down on both the contractor and also the homeowner. Yeah. So
unless you build it yourself,
unless you just order the equipment and just do it yourself, which is a bold strategy. Yeah, it's definitely a bold strategy to go that route.
Have you guys seen those Filipino videos where they're building pools and stuff,
like just hand shoveling out? Yeah.
Yeah, we could just do that.
And it's like the Taj Mahal. Like it's like the Taj Mahal of pools. Like they make like little platforms. It's like very ornate, and it's not like they're trying to backwoods it, right? We're just like line it with little plaster. They literally, put clay all over it and let it dry out, and they like sand it down.
There's always that video of those guys, they're like building stuff in the jungle out of like sticks. And
but always ends up like insanely
insane.
Insanely detailed
and
cool.
You could quit the gym for like an entire year if you did was just every day go shovel your pool for an hour.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
And you still might not be done in a year.
Yeah. See like mini hydro hydro plants, like they do like hydroelectric plants on their like little stream that run next door to it.
Yeah.
YouTube's crazy.
It's wild, man. Wild.
YouTube's crazy.
Yeah.
So
Who's buying houses these days? Is anybody buying houses?
that was actually
Who can afford to buy a house right now?
that was the most interesting stat that I was pulling up was homes over $1 million. Like how many homes over $1 million have sold?
Turning and burning.
Go to the other tab. I know we were going to start here, but let's go to this other tab. Back, I pulled 2020, scroll down. I went back to 2020, December of 2020, and all the way to the bottom, I think, or close to the bottom. Right. Keep going. Right there. So this is halfway through the year in 2024. Homes between $1 million and $2 million. They've sold 200 of them.
That's crazy.
26 over 2 million to 3 million. 26 homes over 2 million to 3 million. 3 million to 5 million, 17. 5 million plus 5 homes have sold over $5 million in Washington County.
So rich people.
Just this year.
This
Since June.
Right.
Yeah, from January to June.
What would be what's your guess on how many of those were sold cash? Probably most of them, right?
Chantry's a good person.
Over the 2 million mark, I have literally in 16 years and thousands of mortgages never actually done a mortgage over 2 million. I've done a few homes over 2 million where they put like half down, but like I don't think I've ever even been like a $2.5 million house.
Like the requirement for that would be an insane salary job, right? Like you would be like, I don't have the cash, but I have enough money that I make on a regular basis. Or
you could be self-employed and have good history. But I think most of those are, I think it's probably like 75% of those are cash. Over, like you start getting over the 2 million.
Yeah.
So go a couple more down. I'll go back to just the end of 2020. Go to the next one.
What might happen on that is those people that are buying a $3 million house, they have private bankers and stuff a lot of times too. So maybe they finance through them instead of coming to a local mortgage company like us. But
I'd guess too that like over 2 million is very, very wealthy where they're not worried about tying cash up. Whereas like between 1 million and 2, they probably don't want to tie all their cash up, but they still have a ton of money.
Yeah.
Like
we
that.
do quite a few in the $1 million to $1.5 million range.
Of course, I didn't send you this one. So this goes back to December of 2020 for the entire year. December of 2020. I didn't send you this one, Blake. So I'm just going to rattle it off. 1 million to 2 million for the entire year of 2020. 137 million to 2 million. Just number of properties sold from the price point 1 million to 2 million. 137 in 2019. 63 for the entire year. Yeah. Go back to that.
So
Where are we at?
That goes back to the old adage. We've mentioned it hundreds of times in St. George.
Back twice.
If you build it, they will come.
If you build it, they'll come. I think also, go back one more. Right there. If you look at, so 200 so far this year. We were at 159 at this point last year. In 2020, we had 137 for the entire year, and in 2019, 63. But only 12 for the entire year over 2 million, from 2 million to 3 million. Only 12 for the entire year.
Now, there's a maybe a little bit of a caveat with the number from 2019. Is it was a different market. Now things are more expensive, right? $1 million house now was probably $750 back then. Yeah. So there's probably a little bit.
But let's look at these percentages though. Okay, so from 2019 to 2020, 117% increase in 1 million to 2 million, 50% increase in 2 million to 3 million. Only 4 properties sold from 3 million plus in the entire county. 4 total properties sold over $3 million in 2019 or 2020. Only 2 in 2019. We're at 17 so far this year. 142% increase since 2023. 7 through June in 2023.
So where's the money coming from?
Well, this is the point. Is like the demand, like who's buying houses. We've hit, because of I think notoriety of Southern Utah, the type of home that is now being built. Right, if you're a builder in 2020, you're like, do I want to build 200 medium-sized homes, or do I want to build 5? $3 million homes. I'm going to go with 5 $3 million.
There's a house over in Meadow Valley Farm, $7.5 million, just listed a couple days ago. Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable.
And people are buying them.
And I bet you it sells in a couple months.
I wonder, I think a majority of those are cash.
Uh-huh.
And I actually bet a lot of those, it's not like they're even primary home. You see a lot of these insanely nice homes that you're like, no one lives there. Like, oh yeah, we visited a couple months out of the year kind of a thing.
Yeah.
We're actually from somewhere else.
Yeah.
They just have so much money. They're just trying to hide
I think
it
you're
somewhere.
right. I met a guy who owns, he owned 42 Little Caesars pizzas in Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, I think Vegas and Arizona, 42. And same thing. He's got big brand new home in Little Valley. He had a black and orange boat and a black and orange F-350 that he kept in the boat garage that he just used. He's like, yeah, we come
Always
down
hooked to the boat.
we always come down. We come down a couple weeks a year or something.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
like, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking a couple $1 million of assets right there.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Anyway.
I think that's the thing. That's the point, is that I think in 2020, between 2020 and 2021, we hit the radar of the wealthiest people within driving range of St. George, and further probably, right? We just hit this huge echelon of people, and then we started building houses that fit the needs of what they are wanting. And we're just big enough a town that we're not a small town anymore. How long you said you lived here? 20 years?
Moved here in 2013 to go to college. 21 years.
Right? And
It's
so
not even the same world.
it's not even close. And so you could see how somebody coming from a big city would be like, oh yeah, I could spend a couple weeks down here. Where before it was probably like, I could
Missing
spend
a
a
lot of
weekend.
things that we'd be used to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Someone coming from like Southern California, where there's 15 million people in the LA area, and they see St. George and they're like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
You got a ton of money. They can come relax for a little bit. Not
We
sit
were
in traffic
already
everywhere.
already growing, but when COVID hit everywhere else and it was almost like business as usual here, it really put us on the map.
It was still free.
We would have probably had ended up this way, but I think it 10 times accelerated it
Yeah. Yeah.
because it just
Absolutely.
became well known. All of Utah really, but like especially here, it was like, I mean, people were. I met people that were trying to buy homes around then, and they were like renting homes for like 6 months at a time, and they lived in Chicago. But they had heard that we were like way better off during COVID than these other areas. So like they were just researching places that were handling COVID kind of business as usual, I'll say, and coming from all across the country and gobbling up rentals for a long time.
Yeah.
And then love it, and then decide to stay.
Yeah.
We did a bunch of loans for people like that they had never even heard of us.
Well, and so when you think about that, I think when we look at supply and demand, right? If we were to just look at, if you want to go to the other tab and we were to look at what the absorption rate is, right? So it's like, how is the market? Who's buying? I think demand, there's demand all across the board. There's demand at the low end. There's demand at the high end. So there's almost an infinite amount of demand for housing in St. George, right? There's just always going to be somebody wanting to buy something. We can only sell so many things because only so many homes are hitting the market, right? And so absorption rate is around 3.7. So 3.7 months of inventory. So if you were to take the average number of homes sold every month for the last 12 months, and you divide it by the active inventory, we're assuming no new homes hit the market. How long would it take to deplete the existing inventory?
Yeah.
It'd take almost 4 months to deplete it, right?
Yeah.
And so if we think of from this number, what we can decide on, is it a seller's market or a buyer's market?
Yeah.
So between 0 and 4 months of inventory is going to be leaning towards a seller's market. Now, I think even 3 months of inventory, it seems like inventory is moving faster than it was. It's almost like we've readjusted our assumption on how long it takes for a house to sell after COVID. It seems like the days on market have kind of hit like a ceiling at like 60 and 70 days, where I think for a long time there, like 80 days on the market wasn't uncommon. Even 90 days on the market wasn't uncommon. Yeah. And so homes just seem to be selling faster. So I would say seller's market is probably 1 month to 3 months, or 0 months to 3 months of inventory is probably more of an accurate, for me at least. I don't know if you disagree.
So in NAR stats, like national stats, if I remember correctly, are a seller's market is basically 0 to 6 months,
Yeah, that's what they say.
and then 0 to 90 days on market. That's like, it's a little bit of a broad stroke, but that's how they define a seller's market.
But thinking of like, okay, a seller's market would mean upward pressure on pricing, right? Like what is pushing prices up, where we're kind of flatlined on pricing, right? And we've been flatlined for almost like 12 months, really.
I mean, for a while, 9 to 12 months.
We've basically set, 2 to 3% inflation, depending on the month. We're at like 2 to 3% appreciation over the last 12 months, which is a fairly balanced market. But our absorption rate hasn't been over 4 in that 12-month period of time.
What's crazy is as fast as we went up, it definitely leveled off, but there wasn't really something goes up way steep. There's usually a little bit of a fairly decent correction
Pullback.
to find the norm, because you go too far. We kind of had it, but not really. It just kind of just went, okay, we're going to stop right here as soon as mortgage rates started going up and affordability got crazy. But like we never really went the other way.
Yeah. Well, I think supply never swung.
Yeah.
Right. And so like thinking of the people that moved here from somewhere else, there's been some bounce back where they moved here and they're like we have sellers right now where they moved here. This isn't quite what they imagined over the long tail, right? In the short tail, it made a lot of sense for them, right? They wanted something different. They want to go try something new. 2-3 years later, they're like, this isn't panning out the way I really thought it was going to. Maybe the job doesn't work out, or, this, that, or the other thing happens. And now they want to go back to where they came from, right? Whether it's the East Coast or whether it's California or closer to family, whatever it might be.
Right.
So we've had some bounce back, but the majority of sellers have basically had to sell, right? They had a job transfer, they lost their job, or they got a job transfer. They're getting a divorce, or they died, right? Like that's supply, right? It's none of this, hey, we want to upgrade, or hey, we're looking to, do something else, second home. Even the second home buyer market, that sales market, if they bought a home in the last 3 to 5 years, they're holding on to it. Most people aren't selling any of those second homes, right?
That probably is where we did see a correction, though. When you guys say where the vacation home buyer that could use it and rent it on a night and weekly basis, the numbers were so insane as far as what they could earn nightly rents and how many days it was rented.
Yep.
They were renting them at like 80-90% occupancy and almost getting whatever they asked for during COVID.
Not no mo.
No. And so people bought these houses based on those numbers. And it's like, guys, this isn't really, it's blown up, but how old's Las Palmas? This isn't a new thing in St. George.
70s, right? 70s, 80s?
I think 80s, yeah.
The VRBO thing obviously made it happen, but like this isn't like brand new. Like 50-60% occupancy is like you're ripping. That's good. And so these people are buying houses with the expectation of like 80%. Like we're pretty much just going to empty the house, clean it, and have a guest come in tomorrow. It's like, that's not normal. And people don't come vacation to St. George in July and August, but during those years they
cyclical.
were.
Yeah.
So it's like, guys, you're going to have, you got to almost plan on having probably 3 or 4 months where you're going to just pay that whole mortgage payment.
Yeah.
So those corrected.
Some of those corrected for sure. And then a lot of those, though, they've also just held on to them. A lot of them are like, well, maybe it's a loss. Maybe I'm not making as much money as I thought off of it, but I come down and I use it. At least
I can use it. Yeah.
I can still use it. And there's a bunch of equity in it still, right? Yeah. In their mind, they're like, well, we'll just hold on to it and maybe.
Well, unless they bought like at the peak, and I've got a buddy that bought at the peak, and
there's a few of them. Yeah.
There's some
where he's probably under. I mean, I say underwater, but for what he could sell it for, he probably would take an $80,000 to $100,000 loss now, and he's bleeding $2,500 a month on it. But they come down and they use it, and it's a vacation home, and he makes good money, so it's not the end of the world. But just an example of what.
That's what most of them are.
Yeah,
like,
some of them are writing that off. They're like, "Oh, this is a loss.
Yeah.
This is an investment loss."
Yeah.
And so
unless you're a W-2 employee, that's tough to do.
It is tough to do.
There's some other vehicles, I guess, but.
There's some strategies, right, that make a little bit of sense, but we just have not seen. Yeah, we're not tax or financial guys.
What I've seen though, so I'm not giving advice whether this is right or wrong, in the IRS code, that if it's less than 30-day rental, it can be viewed as an active business instead of a passive investment activity. Correct, and you can actually run it through a business entity.
And you should.
And so you really do get. Yeah. That's the one rental property that you can have as an active income or active loss, really, is what they want it to be. So it could offset your W-2. And so that's why it makes a lot of sense for some of those really high W-2 income earners. It's like, it might make sense to lose $2,500 a month and have a vacation home for my family. And long-term play is probably have equity, and long-term play is at some point rents will kind of go up.
Yeah.
And you got a place to stay. You got a place to come in.
And you're offsetting your tax burden to some capacity.
So it's still such a small portion of the market. So like if we look at all sales, whether it's commercial land, just residential housing, acreage, the total number of sales projected for the year is 8,304. That's Southern Utah Title's projections. They're pretty dang good at projecting out stuff.
8,000.
That's commercial real estate transactions, commercial lot, land, and then residential dwellings, right? And so if you look at just residential dwellings, so far this year we've sold 3,200 homes or dwellings, right? Rooftops.
So in the 6,000.
Yeah, right. So 6,000 to 7,000. That's really the max number. Back if you total projected sales or total sales from 2021 was 12,000, which was the high. The average is 9,000.
2021 was double of what this year's going to be.
So
it was 12.
Yeah. So almost it's not quite double. So 8,000. 8,000 total sales.
Lots.
Yeah. Lots and acreage. So 8,000 to 12. So we're up since last year. We're up 12% in total, but the average is 99, about 10,000 total sales in all real estate.
Really?
And that's the average, right? And so when we think about, we're still underperforming what we typically have done in the supply side, right? Because if you just, and demand is there, but it's mainly driven by there's just not a lot of people putting their houses on the market. There's just not that many things for sale.
This is an interesting stat that we ought to bring up. I would love to know how many total sales there were like in, say, 2016.
Yeah.
Because what you could relay that to is there's got to be a relationship between the population and the number of sales. There's just more people that die, get divorced, lose their job, grow up and get a big boy job, and now they're buying. Like, it's just, there's a number there. And it doesn't feel like there's more total transactions now than there were 7 or 8 or 9 years ago. I'm pretty sure if I went back and looked at the charts, it was kind of like, 300 a month residential homes.
Yeah.
And,
well, so if you think of just all sales, like the average is about 10,000 sales, right?
Yeah.
That's the average. And we're going to not even get to 9, right? We're only at 8,300.
Yeah.
And so thinking about to your point is populations increase. We've built homes every single year, right? We build about, between 28 and 3,000 homes every single year, right? Because there's just a capacity for how fast our economy can build.
The truth is, the biggest thing isn't that builders don't want to build, right? It's a labor issue.
It's a labor.
Yeah.
But it's also penciling it in. We could plat lots all day long and even get them through the city. But if it doesn't pencil out, right? Yeah. If it doesn't actually make any money, there's no reason for them to put everybody to work on them, right?
I mean, we've experienced that a few times on, chatting with builders about a piece of land or putting a project together. And at the end of the day, it's like, hey, this just doesn't make sense to move forward
at this point.
At the price of the land.
Right.
We're seeing isn't there kind of like a big nationwide shortage that the upcoming generation, none of them want to be in the trades. So there's huge shortage in all that stuff. Plumbers, electricians, carpenters, stuff like that.
Which is interesting because, against supply demand, I mean, if you're 18, you just graduated and you become a journeyman welder.
Hey, you got a job tomorrow. Yeah.
You got a job tomorrow and you've got a great paying job. And then you've got an opportunity to start your own business and probably become a millionaire by the age of 30.
But I think that's the way the economics of it, that's kind of, it's incentive based, right? So if the work that it takes to go do that, they might not necessarily be interested in it.
Right.
And it could just be our generation or maybe just the generation after us, but maybe my boys, our boys, right? Our kids, that younger generation, they might be the ones that are like, oh no, we'll pick up the trade.
Maybe.
Right. And so
I don't
we're
wanna go to
short right
college,
now, but I don't want to go to college, right? The idea is, for a long time we were pitched, you got to have this upper education, you have to have this white collar job.
Yeah.
And now the blue collar jobs pay just as well as the white collar jobs. It's just a different hard.
Yeah.
But the amount of money that you could make makes sense, right? And so I think we're going to go ebb and flow through times of, this makes sense at this period of time, but a generation later.
Like if the current market stayed the same, my boy's just turning 10, so I'm a long ways from this. But if he's like, hey, I want to go to the trade high school, and then I'm going to roll into Utah Tech, and I'm going to walk out of there as a plumber, I'd be like, dude, what an easy jump into a professional job that you're going to start making some really good money really young.
Yeah.
I'd be like, dude, that's a great path.
And he doesn't have to do it forever because he could build a business around that, right? He could be a business owner. He could be self-employed for a while and then,
I'm a little on the flip side too, maybe, and maybe we're probably a little similar in this, is if he's like, well, I'm just going to go to college, I'd be like, what are you going for? Well, it's just what I'm supposed to do. I'm like, no. Let's either have a plan, or let's like push pause and go like learn some skills in the work environment. And then go where I think our parents, at least like my growing up, it's like, you just go into college.
Yeah.
That's exactly
Otherwise,
how
you're going to be
yeah.
a ditch digger.
That's exactly how I was. I mean, I'm 37. My parents, I don't know if they're probably a little older than boomers. My parents were born like in the early 60s.
Yeah.
But I mean, my financial training growing up and like my plan was go to college.
Yeah.
Well, what do you know?
Mine too.
I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'm going to
But it
study.
didn't matter. They're like, just go.
You
Yeah,
have
we'll
to go
support
to college.
you. We're saving parents back then were like, we're carving out some cash for you to get your head started into college.
If
My
you don't
parents
go to
were
college,
like that.
you're going to be flipping burgers. And it's like, well,
yeah.
if I didn't go to college and I did start flipping burgers, I probably would own 17 McDonald's right now. You know what I mean?
Do you mind if I chime in on that?
Yeah. What you got, Blake?
Yes, Blake.
Yeah,
please.
Dude. So there's a book called 0 to 1. It was written by Peter Thiel, who like partnered up with
PayPal, right?
Elon Musk. Yeah,
Peter Thiel's
PayPal.
Yeah.
Yeah, he talks about in that book how that boomer generation, everything in every industry got better, and not directly from their own participation, right?
It wasn't that generation made better jobs. It was that the whole system was all clicking together at the same clip, and we've gotten off the rails where now it's so expensive to go to school. It doesn't actually guarantee better jobs or higher paying jobs.
Yeah.
It's just we've gone off the rails, and so from their window, it made sense that they could see the result of you go to school, you make more money, and they could see that playing out in real time as we were growing up, where that's not true for us anymore. And so we're looking at the reality for our kids, trying to steer them to that next generation, which is interesting because then it makes me think it's like maybe we should be telling our kids to go to school.
Yeah, maybe that's the flip side.
Maybe we're messing this whole thing up, right? But
there had to have been a shift somewhere in people owning businesses put less emphasis on the need to have a college degree.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of businesses, they have that as like this, you got to check this box, but it's not that it actually means anything. It's almost like, did that person just go through the effort to get, it's almost just like this benchmark to see, did they have the will and the drive to get through that hurdle? And now they're going to get rewarded because if they didn't really want to do that, do I really want to, roll the dice on whether this person's got the stamina or what, the get it done-ness.
I've seen that even when I've seen resumes. That it's never been a prerequisite for any position I've ever hired in my life that they had a college degree. But I will see, like, if two equal candidates, one finished 4-year degree, I'm like, that's really hard. And it probably proves you got a little bit of grit.
Depending on what the degree is.
Yeah.
Truthfully.
It's true.
But
that's true.
But for the most part, I look at it and go, you probably have a little bit of grit to finish. You finish what you start.
And this is what I will say too, is that what I learned in college, if I'm honest with myself looking back, what I learned in college was another tier above what I learned in high school. Absolutely. The critical thinking skills, the logic tools, the interactions with the teachers. It was a more adult version of high school as I kind of understood it. Now I went to a private military school, so it was a lot of similarities because I got treated like a college kid in high school. But I look at the way my wife went to public school, and her jump from public school, high school to college was a huge leap.
Mine was.
It was
Right?
too for me. Yeah.
And so depending on, the type of schooling that you're getting in high school, that college can actually really stretch you in your ability to think logically, common sense, some basic levels. So I think there is a lot of benefit and value out of it, but does it match the cost, like the actual expense to actually go get that, especially if you don't really have a plan? You're like, I'm going to go figure it out in school.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah,
So
you end up
I have that
coming out with a
conversation
different gender.
with my boys sometimes too, where like my oldest is constantly like, hey, like, should I go to college? What should I do? He's 14 now, and so it's like he's starting to think about that stuff, and I'm like, if you go, I would love it if you went to college. That'd be great. But if I were you, here's what I would do. I would go whatever college I wanted to go to. I'd go to the counselors, and I'd get a copy of what's the number one career field coming out of that particular college, and I would do that. Like at the University of Utah, it's geotechnical engineering. You graduate in geotechnical engineering, you have a job on day one, you're making $110,000 a year.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like but on the flip side, if I'm going to go to college and I'm going to study, I'm going to get an English degree, you're not guaranteed anything, and you're going to have, student debt, and you're going to be looking for a job right after you're done.
Was it Aaron Olson we were talking to last week? Mm-hmm. So last week we were talking to Aaron Olson, and I've said this before too, is like a 14-year-old, they can't go get a legitimate job at this point, right? Because, whether it's culture, but whether it's like state laws, right? We have all these reasons why a 14-year-old can't really go legally get a job.
Mine actually does have a job, but...
Yeah, but in a different way, right? But because it's almost like because we're in a smaller town and we know the owner, and it's like, okay, you can go get a job, but is it
right?
Is
it like
if he wanted to go get a job, right, where it's your parents have nothing to do with it, you just go out into the workforce and want to start learning, some of these things that kids kind of can't. They have to start at like 16 or maybe even 18 before they'd even be able to have the opportunity to learn that. I think we need to give the kids an earlier opportunity to decide in the workforce what they might like and what they might not like, right? And I think there's plenty of businesses that they could adjust to have somebody that's a younger age, plug into their business at a useful level that makes sense. But the economy hasn't allowed for that space to even exist, right? So the kids can't even go out into the workforce and get some experience before they jump into college to decide what they want to do.
So this all started with the great question you asked. Who's buying these houses?
Who's buying these houses?
Who's buying these houses? What's the you just ballpark? What's the median sales price in Washington County?
So the median list price is $659,000. The median sold price $510,000. 2024. That month. Okay, for the year to date. Sorry, 522. Yeah, 522. Median list is 588 on 2024. So
522.
522 is the median sold.
Let's just assume that, because what I'm going to ask you is what do you think it takes income wise from a household standpoint to buy that house?
So at 522,
let's just assume
5% down.
Yeah, low down payment.
Pretty decent credit. Let's assume that they don't have a lot of consumer debt. Your mortgage is going to be $3,200 a month, probably $3,000 to $3,200 a month. Yeah, you're 49% debt to income. I mean, you better be making $6,000 a month at least.
Yeah, and that's probably like really pushing it. So like, it's probably about 550. You probably ought to be getting in the range of $100,000 in income. Pretty close. $8,000 a month kind of thing. You could qualify for maybe on that higher end with a little less, but that's pretty tight.
Yeah.
So and it's hard to do in St. George too.
Yeah. So you probably got to make household wise about $100,000 a year to buy a median price home.
And it's from your monthly budget standpoint, it's like, 10 to 15% more than it was, 5 years ago, because now your debt, the allotment of that $100,000 every month going toward housing, it was like between 30 and 40% really just a few years ago to now it's 45 and above, right?
In 2012 through 16-ish, I was having 21-year-olds that them and their girlfriend both had a job that was paying mid-level. They were both laborer type income earners and they could buy a house.
Yeah.
Now you really got to be in your career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe one of you is in your career and the other's part-time, or you're both full-time in St. George. Because I think what's the median like income earnings for employment here? It's probably more like 60 grand, right?
60 is what
I think it's 50.
So for the most part, if you just took averages, it's probably going to take a husband and wife working to buy a medium priced home.
Yeah.
In mid-level employment.
And then if you look at here, scroll down.
So while you look that up, maybe I'll pose this question.
Stay right there.
Is it better to buy now
here,
then?
I got it right here.
Or should you wait, maybe for 9 months or another year or 6 months? Like what as a financial guy, as a lender, like what kind of advice do you give folks?
It's a great question.
That way.
I've never been one that I don't believe you can time the market correctly. So I don't do loans for opportunistic flippers. It's like day trading real estate. Mm-hmm. I've never done it. I've bought a lot of properties over the years. I've always been, it's a long-term play and I know it's going to work. And so I always say, don't worry about where the market is or isn't. Don't go buy a house because your grandfather thinks prices are going to go up. Mm-hmm. Buy a house when financially you're okay. Mm-hmm. Financially, we know our employment is solid. Mm-hmm. We don't see ourselves leaving the area anytime soon. Mm-hmm. We're probably only going to have an upward trajectory on our income going forward. Mm-hmm. We don't have a bunch of like really ugly debt weighing us down, like, bad credit card debt or crappy tax lien stuff.
Yeah, right.
Clean all that up. That's when I'd probably be like, might be the right time to clean that up, then go buy. Because the thing people need to realize, when you buy a house with a low down payment, you will be paying more than if you rented the home. Your payment will go up.
Correct.
I never meet, like, I could probably think on one hand how many people I've met with. They're like, well, I'm renting for this and I could buy for less. It's like, that doesn't exist anymore. It's like, you're going to have to stretch your budget now. You guys have been living on this. You're negative on your finances a little bit. You're not putting any money into savings. How are we going to jump your house payment up $500 a month? Mm-hmm. How's that going to work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I also don't think I would advise somebody like, well, I'm going to take a new job in a year and a half and we're going to relocate to somewhere else. I'm like, well, you
should wait then.
Yeah. Do you have the financial means to have assets available to hang on to a rental? Because the fact is the rental may not be rented. You may need repairs. Like, you can't own a rental with zero money in your bank account. Mm-hmm. And a year and a half from now, all the statistics lead us to believe that the housing market will probably be okay. But like, that can turn on a dime. Yeah. Like, could you afford to maybe lose 5% on that house in a year and a half, which is on a medium priced home, like 26 grand?
If they sold it, if they held on to it and then they try to sell it.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're buying from a short-term perspective, are you prepared for either one of those risks? Mm-hmm. So that's when it's not the right time to buy.
Yeah. Well, so my little point on that is, if your lender's telling you anything different than what Chantry just said, please fire them. You know what I mean?
Well,
that's a bit of a generalization. But
I'm curious of those first-time home buyers that come in. Have you seen a change over time in how they manage their money? Because as a lender, something I recognize is that you basically have to put a P&L together. You put a balance sheet together. If they don't already have it, you're putting it together for them. Are you seeing that the buyers that are walking in the door are more aware of their financial situation than in years past? Do you think are they worse now than they were? But over that, you've been doing loans since you were 19, man. Like, yeah. Have you seen, is there a progression there? What do you think?
I think the younger generation's a little more cautious than their parents were. And I'm going to call the younger generation like 25 to 30-year-olds. Mm-hmm. So their parents are probably like 55-year-olds kind of thing. I think they're a little bit more conservative in terms of like less student loan debt and less credit card. Now, that's a weird thing to say because student loan debt and credit card debt nationwide is at an all-time high.
Right.
But I think a lot of these younger
But that's
kids,
also macro. We got a really diverse, the country's really diverse, right? So if narrowing it down into, small town USA, but this little corner of Utah, it seems like
I feel like in general, the younger ones are a little bit more conservative on their spending.
Yeah.
They don't want to get into a crappy spot because a lot of them probably grew up watching their parents lose everything in 2008. So that sticks in their mind of like when they were in high school, I watched what could happen. I don't want to do that.
Except a 25-year-old was 8
Yeah.
in 2008.
Most first-time home buyers are probably 30.
Well, but also thinking of like the message that they're getting from their parents too, right? Is like their parents are learning through that, and they may not necessarily be watching it, but their parents are sitting here, consciously or maybe subconsciously showing them like, hey, we got to be better with money management, right?
Yeah.
You can't just go to the the dollar store and just get whatever we want, or I think there's a message that's being passed down to that generation to be more conservative or more responsible with financially.
And my same answer on that too, though, is I think when it feasibly makes sense to you financially and career path wise, and most of these people that we're getting into high debt to income loans, meaning the payment is a large percentage of their income.
Like 48, 49%, is that what we're talking about?
They're on an upward income trajectory.
Yeah.
So this payment is going to be really hard for the next year. But if you guys can see some increase in income over time, 5 years from now, that payment's not going to feel like much at all. So those are the ones that I'm like, if you can get into a house right now, do it.
Yeah.
I typically am like, do as least amount of down as you can get away with.
Cash is king.
Put that money in the bank for a rainy day or a problem, or you lose your job for a month. I'd rather see that than you had $100 less in a house payment. $100 less in house payment doesn't still get your mortgage paid if you lose your job, but 10 grand in the bank does.
And you're still going to spend that $100 on something.
You'll,
the most
you'll
part,
find somewhere to spend it.
Yeah.
So I think as soon as it financially feasibly makes sense and your future looks good, buy a house with as little money down as you can, because you will look back in 5 years and know that was the right move.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's options too, right? I mean, in Utah, there's a grant available that could be right for somebody.
Yeah.
There's options for sure.
Well, and
FHA loans, stuff like that.
Don't have too much pride to get creative.
Yeah.
Like I want to put myself in a really good financial position. Me and my wife are 27 years old. Maybe we have her little brother that's going to college rent a room from us for $500 a month or something to make it make sense. Yeah. So I think we are seeing, as affordability gets tougher, I think we are seeing more family households. We're seeing parents come in with kids. We're seeing brother and sister buy a house. We're seeing buddies buy a house together. We're seeing kids buy. That's one thing that I have seen that's really cool, is that it's kind of become a thing now. There's podcasts everywhere and Bigger Pockets and all these 25 to 30-year-olds are wanting to buy a house so they can rent all the rooms out to buddies,
Yeah.
And room rents are what, $750 is a baseline here in St. George, and something really nice is more, and something not very nice is a little less, kind of thing. So, I mean, gosh, you buy a 4-bedroom house and rent 3 of the rooms out, it's $2,200. You're probably not even paying that much yourself to own it,
right?
So,
it's going to cover a lot of it.
So it just get creative,
and I think
it's not a forever thing.
I think if somebody's interested in buying a house, there's a path to that house buying, right? It might not be this ideal situation, this perfect scenario, but getting in the game, I've said this a million different times, but you just have to get in the game, right? That first jump isn't going to be, you go back to 2018 and your first jump could be a brand new construction in the fields, and you have a 1/4 acre and 3 beds and granite countertops and white cabinets. And, you have everything that you could possibly want in a home in your very first home, and it's affordable, but those days are gone.
That should be your second home.
That should be your second home. And we went for basically 5 years of that kind of almost spoilage, right? In a way.
Absolutely.
Where it's, okay, we're back to, your entry level home is still an entry level home. Okay. Maybe it's a townhome. Maybe it's a fixer upper from the 70s, right? It's going to be, a first time house. And then once you're in the game, now you have the ability to get yourself, stand yourself up. And then now we can upgrade as we go along.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's the moment that we're at. One thing I think was interesting is so the median is 522,000, right? And so that's just out of all the home sales, that's just the middle dot on the list, right?
Mm-hmm.
The average
there's
sold
options
price
below that for sure.
there's options below that, but the average is 500 or 654,000. Okay, so there's 130 grand difference between the median and the average. So thinking about that is that person that's buying their husband and wife, they're in their career, they're making 100 grand, maybe they can afford a $500,000 house, but what they are buying is not that. That's actually not what those people are buying. They're buying that entry level home, which is actually between 400,000 and 500,000. So if I pull this up, I'm trying to exit out of this whole thing here. If you'll go back to the tab 1, that first tab. Oh, right there. Perfect. So if you look at along the far right side, home sales between 200 and 250,000. We're down 25%. We only sold 29 homes between 200 and 250,000. But the numbers that are most interesting is between 400 and 450,000, we're down 17%. Between 450 and 500, we're down 2%, so just basically flatlined. And 350 to 400, we're up buying. 32. That's where they're buying.
Yeah. That's a new build
townhome.
It's about as inexpensive as you can get. Attached townhome, great starter property for $375.
That's where the market is for that entry level home, right? Is that 350 to 400,000. That to me, especially in St. George, that's that starter home.
I think that's exactly right. Most of the first time home buyers, which they're getting older now, they're more like in their 30s instead of in their 20s.
Yeah.
They're needing something at 400 or less.
Yeah, and then they're basically jumping the other two gaps, right? Between 400,000 and 500,000, I think most people are jumping that. There's not enough inventory in that price point that makes sense because a postage stamp lot, 4 bedrooms, 2-story, 2 living spaces, that'd be great to get that, but you can't buy it under 500,000, right? Between 4 and 5, you're having to go over 5. So
556.
So between 5 and 600. So I ran the stats. So the MLS for some reason, because this price point wasn't the bulk of the market previously, 600 sales between 5 and 750. But if you divide it out, there's 350 between 5 and 6. And 250 between 6 and 7, right? Is the number of homes. So the biggest block of buyers are between 5 and 600,000, and it's really pushing more towards that $600,000 mark, and that's
those are the upgrade products.
Those are the upgrades.
That's a small upgrade. Yeah, that's a small house with a backyard and
what's the payment
2-car garage.
What's the payment on 600,000?
If you borrowed 600,000, like 3,800, $4,000.
Yeah, so I think a lot.
So you're having to jump that salary jump.
Yeah, because you buy a $375,000 house to go buy a $480,000 house. Not that much better, probably.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're sacrificing a lot. So it's like, let's just wait. Let's wait until I can go buy that $600,000 property.
And I would bet you too, a lot of people in the maybe 550 to call it 700 range. Those are folks that bought the townhome in 2016 or 2018 that can put 150 grand down or 200 grand down on that property.
Yep.
And it's a bit of an upgrade for them.
And to that point too, that's why I'm like, as soon as it makes sense, get in and get on it. Like Robert said, get in the game. Is that people that are buying those homes and putting a big down payment, like 98% of them is from gain on real estate.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't have anybody coming to me like, well, I just saved $1,000 a month for 75 months and here we are. It's like, that's not where they're getting their down payment.
I have a client that bought a great attached townhome in 2012 and then kept it as a rental, is cash flowing $1,200 a month, and then used that to upgrade to a big, huge single family home.
Yeah.
And he's basically, from the cash flow from the first rental, he's almost evening out both properties.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. And
Yeah,
it's like time in the market, not timing the market.
Exactly.
Is kind of
Yeah. So the
thought behind that.
a $1,200 on a rent. This kind of is a fun conversation to have about somebody that's got like a casita that they can rent. $1,200 probably relates to somewhere around a couple $100,000 in loan amount.
Sure.
175, 200. So it's like, if you get that, they could upgrade 200 grand in loan, assuming interest rates all stay equal, right? But
yeah, for free.
And assuming interest, you can go get a $200,000 nicer home, rent that for $1,200, and you're kind of breaking even.
Yeah, like the new wave construction stuff over in is it Seoul?
Santa Clara, right?
In Santa Clara, behind Harmon's. That
they're building the ADUs.
They're building the ADUs and the casitas right into it. It's every home in the entire neighborhood, which is great. You know, those kinds of things. Those are creative ways that help our affordability, right? Getting rentals for labor workforce, but just mainly students.
And
is a big
there's
thing.
2 wins there, right?
Yeah,
affordable housing, a nice $1,200 a month little ADU casita thing is a great little rental for most people if it's just a single person or 2 people. And then it's a great opportunity to increase housing affordability for somebody that's stretching themselves, but they've got this rental income coming in. So I mean, that's like a double win.
Well, the Housing Action Coalition, when we ran, who is it that needs this affordability? This house at they're 80% under the median wage, right? It's a single mom with kids, or it's the elderly they've just ran their, Social Security wasn't enough. They ran their investments. They lived longer than they planned on it, and now, they got to rent something. They can't afford, if they didn't buy the house before, they got to continue to rent, and they don't have a place to go, right? And so thinking about these casitas, like me renting out my casita to a little old lady, right, or a single mom with a couple of kids, that's the housing affordability that we need in Washington County, right? Absolutely. It might not be the truth for everywhere, but those 2 segments are the ones that need lower cost housing in Southern Utah.
Yeah. California's about 5 years ahead of us on that.
Yeah,
they're building neighborhoods that are builders are building 1,000 home neighborhoods that they're putting a detached, standalone, 1-bedroom studio casita.
Yeah. In some portions of California, right? Some portions, and that's the thing is the municipalities, the individual municipalities, that zoning and that ability to build those things, that's the big difference maker, right?
Yeah, and local, this might be off base a little bit, but I think where we're at from a local municipality standpoint, they're not on board yet. They don't want to.
I've been disappointed with a couple things I've tried to do as far as adding like an ADU to some rentals I already own and stuff, and they're like, no, you can only do it if you live there and this and that. I'm like, I don't get it. We have an affordability problem. These are downtown St. George properties. I'm going to build something that's really nice, that's going to rent for $1,000 to $1,200 a month. That is exactly what we need. We don't need any more $2,200 a month rentals. That doesn't help most people.
Well, and then the silly thing is that they think that that's going to eliminate, like, by not allowing that to happen. It's like, oh, well, those people just won't come here. No, they will. They're going to rent a house, a 3-bedroom house, and they're going to put 6 families in it, and they're going to sleep everywhere. That's not like an uncommon thing, right? Like that. In California, we left California. That was exactly what happened, right? If you couldn't afford an apartment, then you packed multiple families into one single house, right?
No choice.
They have no choice, right? And people are going to do what they can do to have a roof over their head and have some kind of security. So by eliminating this ability, we're just running ourselves into other problems.
From like a city standpoint, we know we have a housing affordability, especially on the low income rents. Why not go give builders incentives like don't charge them an impact fee or something.
just let go of the chain. Just let go of the chains of control on a standard, right? Like the ADU thing, for an example, too, is even taking away and not saying I have to incentivize them, but just deregulate. Just deregulate.
Make it easy.
Make it easier. Right? The impact fees, every house costs the city money,
Sure.
right? If it's just a house, right? The Washington City is a great example of this.
Yep.
Is they have more housing than they do commercial, and the housing, every time a new house is built, it costs the city money. There's no, it doesn't. They're not going to gain it back from property taxes.
And that puts a strain on services.
It puts a strain on all the services. So it's like incentivizing even more housing, right, is tough from a city standpoint because they're like, we're already losing money every time a house is built, right? That's not helping, the financial situation over the long tail. So what can they do, right? Is letting go of some of those regulations and even increasing the impact fee.
I was just going to say that.
Increasing the impact fee, but
Right.
deregulating what can exactly be built could go a really long way.
So like in your case, if you go to the city and the city's like, yeah, great. Yeah, here's your permit to build the ADU. Your impact fee is going to be $5,000 more than what it normally would be. You probably would be like, oh, that sucks, but I'm going to do it anyway. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So
Of course.
It's crazy though that you can't build ADUs because it's going to change the environment of the neighborhood, but we'll build like 10,000 square foot mansions that look awful, by the way. They look absolutely awful.
Yeah. So the rule was, if I lived in the home, I could build what I wanted to build. But
Right.
since it was already a rental property for me, I couldn't do it.
correct. Yeah.
I'm like, so I could build it and move out,
But there's already a primary resident there.
there's a primary resident there renting it. I'm
Right.
like, so
What does
I
it
could-
matter if it's me or somebody else that's living there on a year-to-year basis? What does it matter?
I'm
Yeah.
like, so I could build it and move out. And they're like, well, I guess technically. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense.
So
Well,
you're just incentivizing me to use the loophole. Like,
You just told me that I could do it. I'm gonna. That's funny.
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, makes no sense.
Well, so a couple other things. I do want to ask I want you to get your crystal ball out. Talk to us about rates a little bit and about what you see for the rest of the year. But one thing the last thing I'll mention on some of the stats, new home sales, we're up in new construction for this year over last year, but we're significantly less of our goal here. Let me pull up. Projected dwellings 29% down. Okay, that was the dwelling list. Let me pull.
So there's
I deleted that out.
there's a Facebook page called Real Estate Humor, and recently somebody posted on there, what's one phrase in real estate you wish would just go away? And the first comment was, I don't have a crystal ball, but ...
I'm gonna never say it again. I'm never gonna say it again. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, the I don't have a crystal ball is the standard, right? Like I can't predict anything, but let's postulate. Dwellings, period. About 30% of our inventory is new construction. We're not building enough. I think total. I don't have the stat right here, but I think the projected total is we're going to be about 2,800 new rooftops. By the end of the year, we need like 3,600 to meet demand just for new construction. So
that's
we're digging ourselves
because
a hole.
everyone's like, there's building going on everywhere. It's freaking crazy. And it's like, we're actually not even keeping up with it.
Yeah, we're not even. I mean, it's not even a high watermark. We're at the lowest end that we've been in Washington County in the better part of like the last 8 years. We're on the low end of new construction.
Yeah.
2021 was kind of the outlying year, and things were clipping along. It was kind of a perfect storm for platted lots being ready and new construction. All that desert color stuff just happened to come out of the ground all at the same time, which kind of just drove that push. But we're still digging a hole of supply. We just don't build enough for the demand that's coming in, and there's a lot of land left. I know it doesn't seem like there's a lot of land left, but there's a lot of places that we could build left, and for us to keep, the economy's doing its thing with keeping prices from going crazy, specifically around the interest rates. But even a point drop in interest rates, I could see demand kicking up and turning up the heat. What would you do? You think that's true too? Even a point?
So the equivalent on a mortgage payment is a 1% drop in interest rate would be the equivalent of about a 10% drop in the home price, or an increase of about 10% in your buying power.
Yeah.
So it would enter a lot of people into the market, because if a buyer comes to me and I'm like, you qualify for like $350, it's like, that's gonna be kind of hard to find something. If we could get you to $4 though. So a 10% increase would be what, $385, something like that. Mm-hmm. That's a lot more doable.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would really, really significantly drive that demand, which scares me a little bit because I don't want to see. I have a huge benefit financially if home prices go up, but for the state of our economy, I think that we're way better off if we're super cautious, like as the United States as a whole, to like be really careful not to let home prices go up much more than they are in the short run.
Yeah,
because employment earnings can't keep up with another jump in. We haven't caught up to the jump we already had.
Yeah.
I think that everybody got on this date the rate, marry the house high horse. And for the, other than when interest rates were 2.5%, which was just a huge mess up by the government.
Free money.
And a mistake that they'll never recover from, I think. I think that's just unbelievable to think what that did to everything. Just put some
stability, just the stability of the, and we already learned that the housing market is a like huge cornerstone in our economy, right? It's like 38% of our economy is like stabilized by this residential and commercial real estate, and that was putting significant cracks.
I significantly benefited from it.
Yeah,
it's like that
a lot of individuals.
That's the weird thing too, right? Is it's like it's individually it was beneficial, but for the macro, it is not. It was not.
It wasn't because. Well, part of our low inventory is these people that have 2.5% mortgages. They're never going to sell that house.
It's free money. You can't.
And so you're not going to sell your house. And so that puts a problem on our supply and demand. That puts a problem on the move up. It's just, historically, first time home buyers pull away from the market, but a move up buyer breaks the market even because they sell one and buy one.
Right.
And that's just not going to happen. A lot of these people will probably eventually upgrade as they financially are able to, but they're going to try really hard to keep their current home as a rental instead of putting it back up for sale just because, how do you sell it?
My mortgage would be more than double what it is if I were to just go buy my house as it sits today.
And it just doesn't make sense for you to upgrade right now. So there's got to be a little bit of a balance. I think that the other thing that did is it established this new norm. Like interest rates probably can't be at like 9%, where, you hear all these people, I bought when they were 14. I'm like, that would just almost crash everything.
And prices were a quarter of what they are.
Because the spread would just be so big between what people have and what new are. It's like no one would do it. No one could afford to do it. So this is just a huge guess, but I think they probably need to end up hovering around 6, and let's call them 6 3/4 or 7 today.
Yeah.
I think that just everything kind of starts to make a lot of sense there. And we actually even see a demand on the market, and most of these builders that are offering incentives and stuff, they're trying to highlight a 5.875 because that sounds really good. But the real truth is it's like that kind of makes the affordability okay. Not incredible, not silly like COVID. Like, wait, my house payment's $1,500 a month because I just got a 2.5%. Okay,
yeah,
not that, but like reasonable. And for most of my career, mortgage rates have been like, if I got somebody a 4% loan, I was like, that's incredible. But I also didn't really get people 7% loans either. So they were like 5s and 6s.
Yeah.
So I started like right after the crash, and I think they were. A little bit less than they are now, 6.5 maybe. So my feeling is healthy. We probably need to work our way over the next 2 years if the government's really just trying to softly land this plane. Like, don't do it tomorrow, but like maybe over the next 24 months, we kind of end up at close to 6. That's what I would think needs to happen. But I want them to be really careful and do a drop and see what happens.
Yeah.
Don't just like COVID. It was like no one paid any attention. Just like drop. Oh crap! Too late. How do you turn the faucet off?
So really, and this is a pretty simple maybe explanation, but if you're a first-time home buyer and you're in a decent financial position, and it's okay for you to buy now, but your hang up is, well, I want to wait and see if interest rates come down. It's probably not a good idea to do that.
Well, the answer is they may not.
But home values, and they may not, and home values are crawling forward. Right? We just talked about all the reasons why supply isn't there, demand is still sticking around, and so home prices are still moving upward, right?
Yeah.
So anytime we're waiting, it's still going to cost you more.
Yeah, and if we woke up on Monday when we all came into the office and interest rates were 1% lower than they are today, let's just call it 5.7.
Home values would be 10% higher.
Every one of your sellers, you'd probably actually literally call, if you were a great real estate agent, you'd probably actually call all your sellers and builders you work with and go, mortgage rates just dropped 1%. Let's bump your house price up.
Yeah. Right?
We're going to get it.
Yep.
Like if
or the multiple offers are going to just push it up on their own, right? You're just going to get multiple people are just going to drive it up.
Yeah.
Right?
There's absolutely no question that would drive up home prices immediately overnight.
And versus the scenario where you just get the house now, rates drop, you can refinance and take advantage of it. You're not competing for it.
And the way I say the buying the home thing is that there's, for the entire course of the world, there's always been an opportunity that you may potentially get to refinance and lower your mortgage payment. But that's kind of like maybe. We hope it happens. But buying a house, what it does is it secures that this is the highest that payment will ever be.
Right.
We might get really lucky and you can get lower. You
well,
know,
property taxes.
Yeah, a little
top
property
there's
tax,
a little bit of
insurance, but in general, just your house payment, it will never, it's never going to go up. So we're securing worst case scenario. Can you afford it today? Do you think you're going to increase your income over time?
That's a great
Most
point.
of these I'm talking about are like, yeah. So it's like, then it makes sense.
That makes sense.
Odds are, if you were a gambling person, odds would be in your favor that you'll get a chance to refinance, but we're not going to buy it. And that's the only way this works.
That's true. Okay. So, Chantry, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
If somebody wants to have the conversation about getting a loan, because that's really the first step. The first step, a lot of times you'll talk to a realtor. They're like, talk to a realtor first. And 99% of realtors be like, have you talked to a lender yet?
Yeah.
So talk to a lender. How can they find you at Guild Mortgage?
Yeah, you can just Google Chantry Abbott Guild Mortgage. We're on 1200 South River Road. My cell number is 435-979-1775. Text me, call me, email me, whatever.
How painful is the application process? Is it painful?
No, the first thing that we do is it's not like I'm just immediately going to be like, you want to buy a house? What's your social security number?
Yeah, right.
It's like, tell me about your situation. Are you in a position? Do we need some credit help? I'd say the number one mistake most people make is that they're intimidated to meet with a professional lender early on enough in that thought process of buying a house. Like if I could give, say, a younger friend advice that was like, I want to buy a house in a couple years. It's like, let's sit down today and start talking about what your budget would need to look like and ideally where we'd like to get your credit score and what debts on your credit should you work to pay off. And I get this question all the time when people are really thinking, and I love when they give it to me, is I've got $5,000 in the bank, but I've got some of these debts. What's going to be the better thing for me to buy a house? And all those answers could be a little different depending on their specific situation. So while you can get some decent generic advice online, financial advice is pretty specific to you, you know?
Yeah.
So
there's just a lot of factors that go into, you know, you can get this one size fits all approach, the rocket mortgage approach, right? But it's every individual is going to have a different situation, what your payment's going to be and how much
your
down
future
payment.
going to look like. Are you getting married? Is your wife going to start working because your kids are grown, or is she going to quit working? Are you going to increase income over time? There's a lot of stuff to it. So start with us early. We love to meet with somebody that's buying a house next year.
And you got a great team. If it's not you, it's Ed or it's Dylan or there's somebody on the team. We've
got about 25 of us in Southern Utah now at our branch between here and Cedar. So,
and the difference between coming to you versus just going to Mountain America.
Yeah. Well, you might get lucky and get someone at Mountain America that's good, but they may be new. And a lot of those people are salaried employees. And so they just kind of got put in that job and maybe it's not their passion. Everybody that works with us, it is like their passion. They earn commission, and that's a good thing. You want people to earn commission because then they'll work really hard to take good care of you. And it's all we do. So nothing against Mountain America. They're a great bank. But how many things does Mountain America do?
Yeah.
50.
Yeah, I was going to say 112.
Any way you can make money possible, they can do it. They'll do it.
Well, the branch manager sells insurance, does mortgages, manages
Auto loans.
and so anyone that is a Guild Mortgage employee or works for our branch, they're a 40-hour a week
Get people a
working
house.
on real estate mortgages. That's it. Period. End of story.
Cool, man. Well,
Sweet.
you're the expert that I know here in town. Thanks
you.
for coming on, man. Jeff, as always, it's a pleasure, sir.
Always a pleasure.
All right, guys. Well, hope you enjoyed this episode. Q2 is in the books, 2024. Hope you got a lot of information out of this one. We'll see you out there.